just before the pandemic as well, I just want to share a little bit about the ethos of applied theatre. One of the aspects of applied theatre is that it stands on pillars such as participativeness, inclusiveness, openness, and non-judgmental space. Which means, as an audience, if you're coming to share your story, we are absolutely open to whatever you want to share, and we are nobody to judge who you are and what is your background and why you chose to share that particular story. So an absolutely open and inclusive space. So we are not going to make a distinction between this story versus that story. Every story is open, and we receive it open-heartedly with two open arms. And of course, the fact is, as much as possible, we kind of try and make it as participative as possible. So we ensure that one person is not constantly speaking, or one or two people are not constantly speaking and hijacking the conversation, which means there's a facilitator there. There's a facilitator who's actually moderating that whole conversation. So in playback theatre, that facilitator is also called a conductor. In forum theatre, is called a joker. In a psychodrama, that role is a little different. Social drama setting is totally different. So the names are different, but that person who is moderating is the one that is who's connecting the audience and the actors, is a bridge between the two, and hence that space of the conductor is a very important one to ensure clarity of, because audience comes with a lot of these thoughts, a lot of these kind of what we call as different threads that hang in that space, and the facilitator in a way kind of weaves along with the audience and finds what we call as a common thread for all the stories. In playback theatre, we call that as a red thread experience, when a lot of different stories have something similar that's connecting to them, and hence the conductor actually puts on them all together and then presents it to the actors who actually perform on the spot, on the stage. What has happened in the pandemic is that, as soon as the pandemic hit, not only in India, but across the globe, practitioners, I think for a few months were kind of quiet, maybe for a few weeks, especially in applied theatre, practitioners were quiet for maybe a few days or so, because the community is large, wide, and very well connected. So we have all kind of artists from different kind of countries. So in the pandemic, I was part of a group called the Playback for People. We are actually a group of 13 actors from 13 countries. Never met each other, don't know each other in person, don't know our backgrounds, but connected on Zoom and started rehearsing every Tuesday on a regular basis. And slowly over a period of time, we also started performing every other month on a regular basis. So applied theatre, especially playback theatre, began to find much more acceptance in terms of its performances, in terms of participativeness. So all those pillars that I was talking to you about, those really came handy in this time. And the most important part is actors from different parts of the world began to collaborate, connect, and perform in a single space, and that's the virtual space. So there is no longer a stage in the pandemic. There is the network now. That network is the stage. How do you adapt to that network? How do you make it aesthetic? How do you keep your stories going? How does a performer perform with lights off? How does a musician come in between that performance? All this is what we're experimenting. And I must say, applied theatre, especially playback theatre, has gone, I think, 3-4 levels higher than what a regular theatre practitioner would do, a scripted theatre practitioner would do. That's because we're constantly practicing, we're rehearsing, we're experimenting, we're trying different things. And hence that form is growing and evolving. So on one hand, you have the form. On the other hand, you have humanity and its experience. So in the pandemic, when people have, we've all gone into our silos and in our own spaces. Here is an opportunity now for you to actually share your story, connect with people around the globe, and connect with an audience, but seated in your house. You are seated in your bedroom or in your living room. And actually, you are connected with a larger audience, a wider audience who share stories. So the pandemic gave opportunities for audiences to share these stories more and more opportunities to share. And hence, what happened is the number of shows in playback theatre, forum theatre, in other forms of applied theatre began to grow increasingly high. Um, yeah, so the form itself, on one hand, the form grew, evolved really well in the pandemic because of the fact that practitioners are constantly experimenting. On the other side, audiences are getting opportunity to share their experience of what they're going through. Pandemic, people go through a lot of stuff, their emotional crisis, their family situation, financial situation, so many different situations. And these are all stories. These are all stories which need a space, a place to voice out. And applied theater is a place where one could easily voice out these stories. And these stories need to be heard because these stories can't be suppressed in a person's system. If it's shared openly and connected with people around, it begins a process of healing. It has its own relevance of not only being connected to where you are, but also it has its relevance to connecting to other people's experience and stories. Very often in applied theater, one story of a person connects to a larger stories of group of people, and hence it becomes a community experience, a community of people sharing, talking experiences. But the most important part is those experiences are within that space, and it's very sacred within that place. People share and connect and keep that ethos within that space, and that is very important because the amount of healing that begins to start taking shape in that community space is beautiful. Because many years back, during our I would say the cave, during the time human beings were in caves, this whole aspect of sharing stories, that's the origin of drama as well, right? The aspect of sharing stories, sitting around the fire and sharing stories. Today I went into the forest. I saw a huge elephant. I jumped on the elephant. An elephant pushed me down. I ran behind it. So these are stories. In time memorial, human beings have been sharing stories to each other. And what better place than theater space where you can share a story, feel light about it, and feel connected to a community of people who are sharing stories. And the actors have a tremendous responsibility to respect that story. It's what you share with us in a space like playback is a gift to us. So we kind of respect that story. We don't make judgments on the story, and we play it back to you in the form of sometimes a poetry, a movement. It could be an object. It could be a symbolization. It could be metaphorical representation. It could be just making a devised improv social theater on the spot. So these are the ways actors take responsibility and ownership of what is being shared by the audience and play it back to the audiences. And this has found applied theater has found a lot of grounding space in a place like the world where space itself was constrained. You are actually in a house completely constrained for space, but the network that you're on helped you widen your space. The whole aspect of space itself started changing because as practitioners, we all started understanding in the non-human world, which is the touch and feel world. We're now going into the digital world. The idea of space, the idea of entertainment, the idea of connectedness, the idea of healing, the idea of narrating, the idea of reperforming, all this started changing. And I think the reason, like I said, is also it all happened is because practitioners themselves were open to all this happening. I think as a practitioner, you need to be open to failures. If you're open to fail and not hold on to certain things that you believe this is what theater is, this is what a performance is. If you want to break those, then experimentation is possible. Once experimentation is possible, then you can go to the next level, which is evolution of that form itself. And so that's what happened in applied theater in the pandemic.